welcome back to another episode of South Star Classroom. We don't have David today, and Omar will be joining us later. But with that being said, how are you doing today, Jubilee?
I'm doing great. I'm trying to see if I can get my heart to work, and
Oh,
I
thank God it's broken. It's fine. It's
I'll,
all good.
I'll get it by the end. I'm doing great. Okay, it's September. We done celebrated 9,000 birthdays. My mother turned 65 on the first. I turned 44 on the 15th. My brother he got older on the 11th, and my daddy is turning 65 on Saturday.
You
So
just telling all these people age. How you know they want people to know how old they are?
because they are forever young and they will not mind. Because if you see them in person, you won't even give them my age. Okay,
I'm
they
just
look
saying,
great.
man. You don't know what they got going on. They might have told somebody they was a different age. You know, you just hating.
Listen, whatever, Charles. Anyway, the point is, everybody's gotten a year older in my family, and we are grateful for life, health, and strength. And that's that. The first month of school is practically over, and we're all still alive. Isn't God good? And that's my check-in. How are you?
That's what's up. I'm doing well. I'm good. Just grinding and hustling, man, and ready to talk about today's topic. So there's just been a lot happening in the world, and Jimmy Kimmel is getting back on air this week. Uh, but here's the thing: I saw a lot of conversation about um, free speech, freedom of speech, and what that is, and how this administration is kind of stomping on it or stamping on it. And I remember over the last few years, it was more the left was kind of stomping out or canceling people that they didn't agree with. I do think this last thing with Jimmy Kimmel was different when the government entity kind of steps in and kind of makes a veiled threat. I think that's an encroachment, but I want us to have a conversation. I want us to have a conversation about how educators should be discussing and teaching young people about what free speech is and what freedom of speech actually means, and doing it in a way that's responsible and not just, like in the lane of their bias. I think the lines are getting blurred from teaching these skills without my own thoughts or my own experiences in it, but like teaching these things. And I think a lot of people's ideals, whether they be left or right, starting to bleed in a little bit more. So let's just start off with that. What does free speech mean to you? Like as is stated in the Constitution, and then I can give the definition or what it actually says.
I mean, free speech makes me think about free thought. Honestly, that's like the first thing I think of. Like, are we, educating our babies, our children, our young adults to have free thought first and foremost? And I think it is the ability to be able to share or express a viewpoint, whether it's widely accepted or not, and not be penalized for it. And I think we need to show what it's not first. I think before we even define what it is, or in order to aid our definition in what it is, like let's take you over to one of the countries where free speech is not a thing, and then and show you, what it sounds like when you don't have the right to express your thoughts and to have free thinking. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, I think I think that was a good place to go because again, there are countries where you can be killed for what you say. There are countries where you can be jailed for what you say and what you do. Like there are countries where it's a lot more dangerous to be a journalist or a cultural critic or any of those things, right? And I do think sometimes we conflate those things. I think a private company deciding that they don't like what you're saying, a private company that might be losing sponsorships and reprimanding you, uh, is different than actual free speech. Free speech don't mean free of consequence, and I do think that the government overstepped in this Jimmy Kimmel thing, and now he's getting back on the air. I think it's because of the backlash. But folks will say that it's just because he was suspended. Well, if that was the case, they would have said it's because he's suspended. They would have said he's suspended, not he's gone indefinitely. So that's what I think. Once the government entity starts to creep in, like this is still kind of on the edges of it, of like, well, we would suggest that such and such. It sure would be a shame if you couldn't get access to those FCC, airwaves. And I think that that's somewhat of an overstep. But here's the thing. I think I think both sides cry about cancel culture in different ways, and I think that it is. I think we have to understand when we escalate things. So, when we were when folks were when the left was canceling a lot of people here and there, and people were getting out, and companies were leaving, that's not necessarily a violation of free speech per se. But I do think that it moistened the garden for like deeper plants to grow. And that's why I think what Trump just did is even more. I think what the FCC and this government just did, it's just threw fertilizer on it. And I think that if we keep going in this direction, regardless of who is in leadership, you're going to see that stuff get more and more drastic. And that's how you don't encroach on the Constitution, or the country doesn't turn into this fascist place just overnight. It happens gradually over time, and everybody somewhat plays a role in it. And so, um, but there's a lot of opinionated people both on the right and the left. But I just wanted you to chime in. I'm gonna actually pull up what they say like freedom of speech is, so we can like have that discussion, because that's where we got to start. I think kids are getting a lot of opinions and not necessarily getting what the facts say.
But can you also just elaborate on what Trump just did? And
Yeah. So what happened was, so Charlie Kirk was assassinated. He was murdered in cold blood. No matter how you feel about it, there's a lot of people that love that guy. Not my guy, but that's these young white people's Martin Luther King. That's their Malcolm X. And I just saw clips of that memorial service. They packed out a stadium. So like an arena. I don't know if it was an arena or a stadium, but it was a lot of people and it was packed out. So he meant a lot to a lot of people. He didn't mean a lot to me. I didn't want to see the guy die like that. I think that was barbaric, but I'm also not mourning him in the same way everybody else is.
yeah,
And um, Jimmy Kimmel was trying to make a joke or a point at the expense of the White House. He was trying to make a joke at the expense of them, and in it, he said something about the person who killed Charlie Kirk being MAGA or something like that. When
mm,
actually incorrect. The kid's not MAGA. He may have come up in a conservative family, but the kid had a trans girlfriend. The kid wrote fascist on bullets, things like that. Like it's and honestly, I just think this whole rush to say whether this person was left or right, fat, conservative or liberal, as Chris Rock would say, some people were just crazy. He
yeah,
was crazy. He's disturbed. If he even did it, I don't. Again, I don't know. And then so what happened was, there was an erroneous statement made, by Kimmel, and sponsors started to get on them, and then ABC immediately suspended him indefinitely, just because of the timing and things like that. But there was an FCC official that was on a podcast and basically commented on it before they did that, and kind of did a mafioso kind of threat, right? Where you don't just threaten flat out. You just kind of like, hey, we you can pay for protection. Sure would be sad if this whole place just burned down, huh? That would be crazy. Like, and then Jimmy Kimmel was taken off. Things had kind of going crazy. People had a lot to had to say, yada yada yada. And now he's being reinstated this week, maybe tonight. But it's led to this larger conversation about free speech. And I just think a lot of people talking on either side have not understood what free speech actually was and what it meant. Omar, before I read the actual definition, um, what would you what thoughts do you have just on tonight's topic, just around freedom of speech, Kimmel, just anything? Just give your welcome to the crowd while I pull up this next little piece
Yeah, I
online.
appreciate it, man, because I was actually gonna, without even having coordinated with you, being like, hey, you know what we should do is go over the First Amendment. What is the definition of it? What are the constraints of the First Amendment? Because there are a few. But I think my general opinion, and hello to everybody, and apologies about my tardiness. I was just glad to make it today. There's a lot going on in my life. Is that as a I think Bill Maher calls himself an old school liberal. I don't know
Mhm.
if that's the right definition for how I feel about the
I'm
First
an old school
Amendment.
liberal. I'm an old school
Um,
liberal
and
personally.
I would say that, like, ultimately, my opinion about the First Amendment is one in which I will defend the right for anyone to say anything that they like, even as much as I disagree with it or don't like it, because this country was predicated on the fact that we could speak freely without repercussions. Where that came from Rousseau, from Locke, from Montesquieu, into the founding fathers, was the idea that, like, you were killed for speaking against the
Right.
church. You were killed for speaking your opinion. You were killed for heresy. And the eradication of free speech and free talk is the eradication of intellectualism. Look, do I like it when someone calls me a spick or a sand N word or a camel jockey or the wide variety of racial epithets that they can that they
Omar,
can
you ain't gotta
employ
tell these
against
people
me?
I call you all these things in production means, Omar. They don't need to know this part. Go
Well,
ahead.
I mean, you type them out like with capital letters and then hyphens in between them, which I find to be like kind of overkill, to be honest. Like, it's weird. Like, like, I will defend someone's right to do that, because even in so-called aggression speech or hate speech, like, do I like people using the N-word? It actually crawls up my skin. However, in this in this present day world, I don't think anyone gets to say that speech needs to be censored. I am a humongous proponent of
Right.
all speech should be allowed. And the First Amendment is about, can we have intellectual discourse without repercussions?
Mhm.
Um, and I think when it comes to the Charlie Kirk situation, look, I find it a little odd that there are comparisons with Malcolm and Martin. I don't think that that is personally the like, yeah, exactly, Jubilee.
I
Like,
mean,
it's
he's
just
that's what he is for them. For those
correct.
people that like Huey Newton means a lot to me, but there's a sect of the world and population that feel like he was a thug, right? That feels there's a lot of people that feel that way about that Malcolm X was divisive, right? I love Malcolm X, right? But like again, when I looked at that whole arena though, for those kids, some of them gonna be
Yeah,
having Charlie Kirk tattoos, bro.
yeah, yeah. And the thing, man, like that I ponder about that is, have you given the ability, much in the vein of what Charlie Kirk talked about, to understand the different ideologies? For all those folks that think he's Malcolm and Martin, I would ask, do you know anything about Malcolm and Martin? Did you ever
Right.
read Malcolm X's autobiography? Because in the free discourse of thought, it takes a much more ingrained depth of opinion. What I mean by that is, like, dude, did you do the reading? Did you learn shit? Did you figure out what Malcolm and Martin were about? Did you actually read their text and not some Facebook post? Did you actually read their his autobiography, the multiple biographies um on
King.
Martin? I took a whole course on Malcolm and Martin in college, man. Like, I read just about everything that they wrote, from letters to phone conversations that were apparently transcribed because the FBI was tapping into their phone. Read those
Mhm.
too. And what I mean by that is that, like, in the discourse of free speech, I am of the proponent that you can have all these opinions, but I'm also the proponent of, are your opinions well informed? Or are you just simply projecting what other people are saying? And sadly, that falls in line with the First Amendment. Yeah, you're just going to repeat a bunch of shit that someone else said. You're going to have uninformed opinions, but I'll still defend them. I'll
Yeah,
still
and
defend it.
I think I'm gonna pull this up, right? I want to put the banner up so people know what we're talking about. I'm not in my normal setup, so it's a little slower for me to do all these things. I don't want to get into the like again. I think we all agree about Charlie Kirk and who he was and who he wasn't. In my eyes, and he is no way by any means a Malcolm, a Martin, a Medgar Evers, none of those people. But I'm not. I'm saying, figuratively speaking, he is what Malcolm X means to me, to a little a white dude in Utah or a white dude in Nebraska or in Illinois, he means that to them, right? Like that he is their version of that. I disagree, but a lot of people didn't like Martin Luther King Jr. when he died. His approval rating was in the tank when he died. But I don't want to lose the conversation because even whether they making sense or not, like the issue is freedom of speech. And I want to be clear to people, right? Freedom of speech don't mean you free from repercussions. So if somebody calls you one of those words, and I don't call him that for real, y'all, we were joking, FYI, because everybody ain't the brightest bulb in the light. You're not free from getting punched in the mouth, right? Like Omar might punch you, and again, even with the Jimmy Kimmel thing, like if a private company, if ABC doesn't like what you said and they lose the sponsorships, they're free to be like, hey man, we taking you off. Hey man, we're firing you. Hey man, you're suspended. The issue was once the government got involved, right? So let me just read this just to kind of help people a little bit. I'll just pull out this little overview. The U.S. Constitution protects free speech through, let me make sure I got it in here. Can y'all see it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I got my one screen. I don't have dual screens today.
We got you.
The U.S. Constitution protects free speech through the First Amendment, which states Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of speech. Words are important, people. Like, understand words. This right protects verbal, written, and symbolic expression from government interference. Symbolic expression from government interference. I want to say that again. Though there are exceptions for categories of speech such as true threats, incitement to violence, defamation, and obscenity, the First Amendment's protection extends to individuals' rights to express offensive or hateful ideas, protest, and even to remain silent. Even if I don't like what you say and I think you're a jagoff and stupid, the government should not be stepping in and doing things, right? Like, and so again, if you don't like Twitter or X and X bans you, you don't really get to say, well, freedom of speech, because X is what? A private company. It's private. They can do what they want. We all have a company. We all have companies, right? If Jubilee don't like something that somebody said to her, she don't have to keep them on her staff. She can just say, I'm not feeling that. But if the government says, I'm going to throw you in jail for having that thought, that's a problem. And I think that's why this Jimmy Kimmel thing is different, because there was a government official that went on a podcast and gave a mafioso type of threat. And it's dangerous because this stuff is gradually happening. Again, they're going to outdo the left on everything. Oh, the left, y'all were canceling our people for doing this and for saying that joke. Cool. Hey, we got the sponsors. We shutting it all down. We're going to sue you. We're going to do this. But when the FCC threatens you and basically says, yo, it'd be a shame if all this burned down, I think that is an encroachment on freedom of speech. Jubilee, you've been listening for a while. You just heard the definition of freedom of speech. You heard Omar's thing. Where are you kind of standing on this? And we'll dovetail at some point into how should we be teaching students and the community about what this is so they know what's going on. But just your general thoughts. We just conversing right now.
Can you put the definition back up, please? Because I was looking at the part that talked about threats,
Yeah.
And I guess that's where my head is, right? So I'm thinking back to your point about when the left had, I guess, control of the media and all of that. And when I forgot the radio guy's name that called somebody. And
Don Imus.
Don Imus. Yeah, dude. Long
nappy-headed hose.
Yes, right. And it's just like, okay, so under the First Amendment, right? I guess technically he shouldn't have been whatever he was, banned, suspended, fired, whatever.
No, he was fine. He got a fine. I mean, the FCC can fine you. There's still regulations.
There's still regulations. Okay, so because that's my question. It's like, okay, then you go around, you say hateful things. Like, what really is the purpose of free speech? Does it not always have to have a purpose? It's just, you could basically say what you want, if it's hateful, if it's loving, and then the government just should not interfere unless somebody's gonna get dead because of it, right? Which usually the two are connected, which is why I have a question mark right now. Like
Well, I mean, let's have a talk about it. Yeah,
I
keep
mean,
going, keep going.
I'm just thinking, right? Like, okay, let's talk about the KKK, right? So
Yeah.
hateful
Who?
ideas, right?
Uh
Hateful
huh.
protests and hateful actions. I'm just saying, like, I think I rarely see, or I've rarely seen, and you guys can put me on and school me, where one is separate from the other, right? Where people are just saying hateful rhetoric without hateful actions to accompany the rhetoric, right? And so that's my concern, right? Like, you can go around saying evil things, saying things that are hateful, saying things that are, unkind. And unless you are making a true threat or an incitement to violence, which I think eventually, if you talk that way, you're going to want to do those things to whatever group of people you're being hateful to, like then you won't get any sort of consequence or accountability.
It's
That's
not that you're not free of consequence.
from the
Again,
government.
but this is important. But this is the point, and this is why we're doing the episode,
Yes.
because this we're conflating different things. Like, far be it, I'm not about to sit here and defend the KKK. But if David Duke does not like us as black people and does not like Omar and all the races that Omar is, I put it in there, Omar. I fit
So
it. I
many of
got you.
them. So many
I
of them.
got you. I
It's like
got
a
you.
hundred.
But David Duke can say I don't like black people and I don't like brown people.
Fine.
And again, that don't stop him from getting punched. That don't stop private companies from not wanting to do business with him. That don't stop him losing money or not being able to get a job or anything like that. But if the government says I'm going to lock you up for saying that and having those thoughts,
Fair
that
enough.
is an encroachment. That is thought police. That's Minority Report, right? That's like, we got things that's going to see what you're doing in the future. Now, again, freedom of speech, like what Lenny Bruce was fighting for freedom. Do you know who Lenny Bruce is, Jude? So Lenny Bruce is
Famous
a Jewish
comedian.
comedian, and he would just go on stage and he would make his jokes, but they would be very crude, and he'd do it on purpose, and he would get arrested for it.
Yeah.
Like, without Lenny Bruce, I don't have Richard Pryor or Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
Like they would come and get him off stage and arrest him.
Wow.
That is a freedom of speech. That is not protecting his freedom of speech.
Gotcha.
You understand? So, but the FCC still. So there are other things in there, right? So, like, for instance, the FCC they control the airwaves, and there's like the basic channels. There's ABC, NBC, family-friendly channels. So they will fine you. The FCC can fine you. That's why when you listen to radio that's not Sirius or XM or anything like that, when you listen to terrestrial radio, if you curse or say one of the big four-letter words, you get fined, because that's the FCC's job. Is they are in control of those airwaves, whether they be radio, whether they be television. So there's a standard there. What we're seeing, and why I'm pressed about this, Jube, is because there's a clear overstep that's being demonstrated by the FCC. It is, we just think that was an insensitive, ill-timed joke. And we don't like it, and we might make it a little difficult for you as y'all trying to do this merger, or you guys want these airwaves. And now you're starting to encroach. I don't know if you completely stepped over the line of taking somebody's free speech away, but you're testing the waters and encroaching and doing like some mob shit. Does that make, I just want to, because what I want to make sure we're having a conversation of, we're going to get into you guys as educators, us as people that educate people. There is what is the actual thing, and then there is what do we like and what we don't like. Mm-hmm. And what's been happening is what we like and don't like is creeping in where it's supposed to be us teaching the thing. And everybody loses when that happens. I don't care if you left, right, center, or whatever. Yeah. You got to know what the rule says and the interpretation of said rule. Right. And Bill, you kind of going wild over here, bro. Like you got. I
wouldn't say Alonzo said it. So if we close Trump yellow, at a threat.
Nah. I think what Bill said about Muhammad was I'm Christian. I'm not Muslim at all. I think that's incredibly disrespectful. I think that he said, we can't even draw a cartoon of goofball Muhammad. Again, the American press capitulated to Islamic wacko nonsense. Here's the thing. It's not that you can't. You can. It just might not be smart for you. People will kill you over that. And
Yes.
again, that's not the government is not killing you, but there are people that will die for what they believe in, man. Like they believe that. I don't believe. I'm not Islam. I'm not Muslim. You know what I'm saying? I respect what people have, but I have no reason to disrespect something that they hold so dear. And here's the thing. I would advise you not to be that brash or talk like that in a place with actual devout Muslims, because you're not making it out of there okay. And it won't be a freedom of speech issue. You're going to say something, they're going to be like, it was a hate crime. And then these people acted in a rage outside of that. But you gone at that point. So
Yeah.
again, we got to understand what actual freedom of speech is. Like there are people right now across the world. If they say something about their government, they get murdered. Say
Mhm.
something about Putin in Russia if you want to. I dare you, right? Like, and so we have these things that we actually do value. I know I give America a lot of shit, but I think we got it right with the Bill of Rights. Omar, your thoughts or just reactions to that?
To what, man? Muhammad? To the
I don't
overall
know. I
implications
mean,
of
Showing
our
respect,
actions,
man.
to the fact that like speech, while ludicrously protected, may have ramifications in the real world. I think it just goes back. I'll hit on three things quick. This goes back to history, and like I'm a huge history nerd, right? So like, where did all this come from? This came from things like the Spanish Inquisition, where like you couldn't blaspheme the Catholic Church, or you got the Iron Maiden.
right,
Straight up, like you just like, hey man, like I believe in Yahweh, I believe in Allah. And it's like, well, like, all right, dude,
right.
real quick. When I was in southern Spain and I was with my boy Andrew, and it's become like a funny story that we talk about all the time. We were walking in, it wasn't Granada, it was Sevilla. We were walking down to this restaurant, and people kept asking us if we wanted jamon serrano. And it's a delicatessen of Spain, but it was just getting weird. It's like, why do these dudes keep asking us if we want jamon? Is there like a veiled thing
That's
here?
ham, right?
Hey,
Is that
get us
ham?
jamon. It's ham. Get us jamon. And I was like, is
My
this
black
food
ass
or
would
something?
know
Like,
pork like that, but go ahead. I like
yeah.
ham. I'm
So
sorry.
let me cut to the chase. I thought this was some
Hamon.
like veiled sexual code. I come to find out that to this day, 2021, 2022, whatever it was, they were trying to find out if we were Muslim or not.
Yeah, got you.
Because if
Oh,
we ate the ham, we were Christian. If we did not, they were still trying to figure that out. And
huh.
what I'm getting at is that like the history of free speech is predicated upon the fact that we can have a discourse of ideas with the hope that it's not just government encroachment, which is that's the violation. Like, hey, the king or the crown is not going, excuse me, the crown or the church
Yeah,
are going to kill you for sharing thoughts. This comes from the Enlightenment. This comes from Isaac Newton. This comes from Leonardo da
yes,
Vinci and Michelangelo. We're sharing that like homosexuality is okay. Michelangelo could get you killed from the church or from
absolutely.
the state. So the idea of free speech was the protection of thought. With that comes the fact that, hey, in a free society, you might get sucker punched. Do I believe that there should be ramifications for saying things for or against Muhammad? Not really, not really at all. However, that is also coming from a different country with a different sect of people, maybe, because it could also come from this country as well. You could get punched out for that thought. You've got to think
Yes,
about, is what I'm saying actually for the benefit of society? And that takes a turn because there's the
right.
history of the First Amendment, but there's also the spiritual component of, and you know, if you've not read the Four Agreements, I recommend it. It's a great book. It's written by a guy named Don Miguel Ruiz. I recommend it to everybody. Within this book, there's these four simple practices, and one of the practices is be impeccable with your word. That's a very hard thing to do. But the
It
way that
is.
I think about being impeccable with my word is my word helping society? Is it uplifting? Is it creating thought? Is it changing paradigms for the positive? Because our words have power. And if my words are soul sucking or deteriorating or ugly or horrific, forget about just the ramifications. What you're doing is putting something very ugly into the universe, and putting
Yeah.
hate and dissidence into the universe often finds itself getting splashed back onto you. And therein lies what we're talking about today with Charlie Kirk and everything else, is that, like, look, Charlie had every right to say anything that he wanted to say.
Right.
I
And
didn't
sometimes
like
you
what he
die for that
said.
shit. And
I
sometimes you
don't.
die for that shit.
And do I agree that one should have violent repercussions for that? Absolutely not. We should say whatever we want without the fear of violent repercussions. But this goes beyond just the law. I get into the universal component and spiritual component of the laws of the universe. You're putting out a lot of hate. You're putting out a lot of negativity. You're putting
Hmm.
out a lot of dissidence. You're creating that hate and that anger and that dissidence. And sadly, even a guy like Gandhi, who is just putting out love, still gets killed.
Yeah,
Still
MLK.
gets killed. What then happens when you're putting out this ludicrous level of hate? We
Right.
can't control how
That's
other
why
people
Jesus was
react.
killed. Jesus was going to, he was not kneeling to the Roman, like, yo, this is God. This is, these things. And they killed him. Like, Jubilee, let me ask you, and I want you to jump in too. What's your thoughts on Socrates? Do you think Socrates added a valuable component to society?
I do.
Right.
I
You know
mean,
what happened to Socrates?
our instructional
I
methods.
drank what?
What?
I shouldn't be laughing at that quote, but
I
it's one of my favorite quotes from history is I drank what? Do you know what happened to Socrates?
no.
Do- well,
What?
I
Socrates
shouldn't be
was
laughing. It's a bad joke,
right.
but it's a
It gets
great joke.
very dark. He was sentenced to death by an Athenian jury for impiety and corrupting the
Oh,
youth.
The youth.
yeah.
Listen to what I'm telling you. The shit that we're doing now, the way that we are talking and educating people without freedom of speech, your governing entity can kill you. Jesus was murdered by the state for he didn't run off on no plug. He didn't hit nobody. He didn't kill nobody. Even if you don't agree with nothing he said, his thoughts were such a that is freedom of speech. And so and I want Alonzo to elaborate. He said, I'm curious of what the question he said, so we can have an opinion, but we have to limit what we say to certain people. You don't
Yeah.
have to do anything, but you might want to, because some people will punch you in your shit. Like you, or some companies will be like, we're not rocking with that. And as much as y'all think that Facebook or X belongs to the government or whatever, it's not. It is not a public. It is not a. It is not a public entity. It is not a part of the government.
But I think he
They can
was
do what they want.
I think he was saying that in response to what you said earlier about, Muhammad,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's like people, I think it's free speech, but it ain't free. I think free speech comes at a cost. And I think no matter what we say, whether we're on the loving side, the hateful side, the hypocritical side, the Socratic side, whatever side we on, you've got to be willing to stand 10 toes down on what you say, lose,
Right.
die for what you say, wherever you stand. Whether we had people preaching love, murdered and killed, right? And crucified. We had people preaching hate that were murdered and killed. So I think really it would be lovely to be able to say, oh, well, they preached love and they were protected. And it's like, well, they still died. They still
No,
died.
man. Look,
That's still love. Like it just
freedom of
wasn't
speech
the
is
government.
talking about the government. It
But
is not talking about. Yeah, go ahead.
I
I'm
get
sorry.
Yes.
Yeah,
that. I got
Right,
that. But
right,
what I'm
right.
saying is the
Which I
government,
agree with you, believe, by the way.
people will
I
get you.
agree too.
The people will get you before the government will. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
That's
yes,
and
yes,
I understand what you're saying in terms of separating it, right? That they shouldn't intervene. But to your earlier point, right? People might intervene and won't stop you from somebody slapping you and saying, "Don't talk about Muhammad like that," or "Don't call me a nigga," or "Don't say this," or "Stop telling me about that Jesus shit," or whatever it is that
right,
people also, you have a right to say what you got to say without governmental interference. However, that doesn't stop your fellow man, woman, boy, girl, or entity from stepping in and saying, "Well, we didn't like that," and slap you on the wrist in whatever way a slap on the wrist is going to show up for them.
And the reason why I'm delineating that, because we're all educators in some form or another. I have seen young people be in a Starbucks talking crazy and then being like, "But it's my freedom of speech. It's my First Amendment right." It's your First Amendment right from government, not from fucking Starbucks. They can get you up out of here. But this is the problem. And this is why, and I agree with you too, Jubilee, and I agree with you, Omar. I agree with Alonzo as well. But this is why we have to delineate between teaching the thing and our opinion. Because these young people were sitting in somebody's class, and somebody was a very opinionated educator and was talking about freedom of speech, and now they don't went out into the world with some faulty information. That shit don't protect you from getting kicked out and banned for life from Starbucks. You can't do that. Or you got this concept of what freedom of speech is, or what your idyllic version of what you think it should be, that there should be no punishment for the things you say, and you go up and you say something crazy like Bill just did to somebody who is a devout fundamentalist Muslim, and you get your fucking head chopped off. Like you get Charlie Hebdo. Like this is what I'm saying. Charlie Hebdo was not. That's not. And listen, you can say that those people were courageous. I'm not in that fighting that way. But them people told you what?
Who was courageous?
The journalist in the Charlie Hebdo. I'm saying, I might be saying it wrong, Omar. How you said Charlie? What? How you pronounce it? Do you know?
I thought you were pronouncing it. I think
okay. Well, if I'm saying it wrong, my apologies. Are you familiar with the Charlie Hebdo?
Okay.
So Charlie Hebdo. So they wanted to do a piece, or I think they wanted to draw or have an image of the Prophet Muhammad.
Correct.
That is
a whole episode on, by the way.
Right, but they didn't show it. They never showed it.
Correct.
They censored it. So the Muslim extremists, I'm not going to call them extreme. The people told them, they warned them multiple times, and then they were on their journalistic integrity thing, which is their right to do, and they stuff got bombed. Those people got murdered.
Was that France?
I think so. I don't want to.
There was an incident in France that had exactly to do with that, because I think it was the satirist. It was a cartoon satirist in France who depicted Muhammad in a negative way, and then came the bombing. And that is then what South Park kind of utilized the satire to be like, it was a kind of a fuck you round, you find out scenario, is that like you may have the ability to be protected, is exactly what Charles is saying, by the state, but it's not necessarily protecting you from the outlandish behavior of humans.
Right. Exactly.
Coming back at you for whatever it is that you say.
Exactly. And we're doing a disservice. And please continue, Omar. I'm sorry. I just finished the sentence.
Jump in.
We're doing a disservice to young people, because as the adults in the room, we're so emotional about what's happening, or who we like and who we don't like, or whatever the case is. We're forgetting to educate. And there's repercussions for that. And there's definitely repercussions if you happen to be black or brown. There's definitely repercussions if you happen to be a woman in these spaces. Listen, man, the age, all that being extra, like authentic and saying what you want, that was under a different regime. Your company can fire you for that shit now. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's not now we can say human decency, and we can say, yo, we shouldn't be getting fired or let go or canceled for X, Y, and Z, which I agree with as a human. But when you start saying, but that's my constitutional right, yes, against the government, against the government, which is why I'm going in on Trump and his administration, because it was a government entity that interfered with what ABC was going to do. If they never said that, if they never went on that podcast and ABC was just like, we don't like what you said about Charlie Kirk and our sponsors don't like it, deuces. We can have fodder, but it's not an issue of freedom of speech as the Constitution dictates. But the Constitution was, we came here, well, not we, the white folks left England because the crown and the Bible ran that place, and they could do whatever they wanted. And that's why it's the first fucking amendment. It's the first one. It's number one. Number before you read anything else, y'all will not limit my speech, and you will not tell me who I need to pray to, or who I can pray to, or who I can't pray to. That's why I was so animated when we had the conversation about the Ten Commandments, because we were having the wrong conversation. It's not whether how you feel about the Ten Commandments. It's not if you believe in them. Jubilee and I believe in that text. Omar does not believe in that text. That's completely fine. But when the government dictates or says with no uncertain terms that there has to be the Ten Commandments in schools, that is a crazy overreach. And that's why this thing is happening. And they are not going to do everything at once. You're going to do it little by little by little, and what it tends to happen there. And our people can't afford to be ignorant on what freedom of speech is, because your ass will be without a job and you will be on your ass somewhere. I'm telling you. And if you're teaching this at a school, I don't know if Bill can teach this at a school, because Bill has a lot of opinions. Bill can have those opinions, but I wouldn't want my child in that setting. I need them to know what it is. I need them to be able to discern and know what the rule is, so they don't get themselves hurt, man. Some people can do that. Some people can scream to high heavens about what they want because they're in the safety of their home. They're not out in those streets. But talk crazy to the cop if you want to when you look like me. It's going to be a problem for you. And I'm not trying to be overly passionate about it, but we're becoming a less literate country. And we have 3 educators here that's talking about it. And we're going backwards in our understanding of these things. And it scares me in different ways. We're becoming more anti-intellectual every fucking day. And I just feel like the next few topics I pick got to be trying to restore those feelings as much as I can.
I like that.
I don't care if you like John Locke. You got to teach John Locke in a political science class. You don't get to not teach it. You know what I'm saying? You don't get to make those decisions if you are in charge of educating the masses. That's why we on this bullshit. Left and right. I'm sorry. I'm not doing a both thing, but I was saying this shit 8 years ago. Like you got the ball right now, but at some point the other side is gonna have the ball. Like that's why I'm like so against stacking. Everybody remember towards the end of Joe Biden, and they were like, stack the courts, add more seats, and I'm like, don't set that precedent, because what do you think would happen right now with Trump here? You would never get your majority back. He'd have 100. He'd have 100 of the most conservative Trumper judges in there for life if he could. We got to just think past our emotions. And it's a problem that we don't, man. Sorry, that was way more
know that
passionate than it needed to be. But
Omar can probably attest to this, right? It probably doesn't happen at his schools, but social studies barely gets taught. I'm just saying. Mm-hmm. When you look at a schedule in a school, you got your solid ELA block, you got your solid math block, and you got your social studies and science barely making it right before dismissal, the last 30, 40 minutes of the day. I'm just saying. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, right? We need this stuff. We need to have these conversations, right? From, pre-K on up, right? Little by little. But our instructional like models in this country, right, unless it's a school that focuses on these things, it's quite lacking, and definitely not engendering the sort of civics instruction and grown people that we want to see in our world.
Well, I would jump into even like I would further that, Jubilee. And it's funny because I think it's just weirdly apropos for like the background that the 3 of us have, and particularly Doc and I. People are like, Omar, what the hell are you going to do with this political science degree? And I was like, look, man, like I just really enjoy studying this. It's taught me how to write. It's taught me how to think. And the subject matter is something that I greatly care about. But I don't know, like I believe in understanding where the precepts of this country came from. And my major and my concentration was not just political philosophy, it was constitutional and revolutionary America. What were the precepts of creating this First Amendment? What is the history behind it? What is the architecture behind it? Because what I mean is that it goes further, is that you go back into like the Reagan, Clinton, even to the, a certain extent, the Obama age, and we were still following the quote social contract. These are the laws that we believe in. These are the thoughts that we believe in. And we are following this experiment that is the United States. And what I don't think anyone understands is how fragile the social contract is. The social contract, as Rousseau put it, Hume put it, Locke put it, is just like, dude, people agree that this is what we're going to do. The minute you start challenging that agreement, the minute the Trump administration's like, we don't have to do this. We can do whatever we want. We don't have to follow the social contract. We can be as authoritative as we want, destroy the precepts of the Constitution. Who's going to stop us? We've got the courts. We've got Congress sitting on their ass.
Right.
We got everything that we need to do whatever we want. What is happening is that the very fabric of this social contract is getting radically challenged. And sadly, no one understands what the social contract is. No one understands because they didn't read Locke, they didn't read Rousseau, they
Right.
didn't read Montesquieu, they didn't read, Hume, Camus, all these fun people that no one knows about. To be like, bro, you didn't get it. This didn't exist. All right. The king and the queen and the church ruled all. You couldn't do shit or you were killed.
Right.
So it was just
Exactly.
a basic experiment to be like, hey, what if we had a place where like you didn't get killed for sharing your thoughts? What if you had a place where science actually was allowed to happen instead of like Isaac Newton and all those folks going underground to practice science for fear of death? And I think kids these days don't know shit about the history of how this whole social contract was developed, therefore have no way to protect it.
Mhm.
They're just waiting for someone to do something. And I'm like, that's you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's you.
Right.
But within the social contract, and getting back to Alonzo's statement, is that Alonzo, we're under an experiment to allow the freedom of thought from the interception of the government, so that I can go online and I can express either dissent or consent with things that the president is doing without fear of getting killed. Because, as Thomas Jefferson rightly put, it is up to the citizenry to revolutionize and challenge our government, king and queen, if they were ever to form a tyrannical faction. Madison 10, right?
Right.
Jefferson and every single one of his letters. But it doesn't, I have to be also smart. I can't sit here and talk shit to Charles and expect that friendship not to be hurt.
Right.
Or for me to go and preach something at a public school and not expect my parents to be like, what the hell, bro? I didn't sign up for this shit. I also
Right.
think it's boringly irresponsible. Or I get that the cartoonists thought that they could, say these things, and like, good on everybody to challenge the precepts of religion. However, it's not going to stop someone from having that anger coming back at you and doing things. One is protection from the state. The other is
Mhm.
just you fuck around and you find out. And there are
Exactly.
ramifications for all those things, man. Hey, Charlie Kirk's murderer is going to be tried and potentially killed. And that is the ramifications of his actions.
Right.
But do we think about, and this is what I get into, I think this is what Charles is getting at. It's not just the history. As humans, do we take a step back and actually think to ourselves, what are the ramifications of our words? Are we actually being impeccable with our words? Are we sharing love,
Right.
kindness, consideration, and thought, and trying to uplift this place versus destroy this place. And for those who are trying to destroy, the universe will give them theirs. It is not
Right.
up to me to censor them. It is not up to me to say that they should be stopped. And I got to tell you, look, this is a issue very much on the right. I very much believe that the right's hypocrisy is not something that we should stand, because you should not
I
have
agree.
government
I
intervention.
agree.
All
I
right.
agree. I
So
agree.
let's get that straight about this. But I'm also
And
not a big fan of the
and
left
right.
saying, "Yeah, you can't say this." I'm like, hey man, you know what? Like, let me practice my freedom of the speech to the left. Fuck you. Shut the fuck up. Go read a book. You need to
Right.
shut your sensitive ass the fuck up, because
Right.
the
When
minute
UC Berkeley
it's
is stopping other people from trying to speak on their campus because they
yeah,
are
man.
calling it
Yeah, man.
violence. That's not
Yeah, man.
violence. College is a public institution where it's supposed to be the flowing of different ideas. That's the whole point. That's UC Berkeley's entire thing. It was a
Yes.
legendary campus. It's one of the most popular and was one of the most intellectual public universities in the world. And over the last 10 years, if they don't like you, they won't let you talk. But then what's supposed to be happening is you're supposed to be teaching people how to combat that. You're supposed to be, how do you form an argument that's better? You're supposed to be teaching people how to do those things. And because we're all just, me and Omar are political nerds. I will accept it. We
Deeply.
are what we are. But I will say this, and I will give this to the people. And Omar, make sure I get this right, okay?
Mm.
There is the modern age, right? Like there were different ages of thought that led us, you know what I'm saying, to where we were. And I just really want people to understand, like, we didn't just end up here. Like we had to go through a process, right? So in that process, there was the church was running everything, and I want to make sure I
Hmm.
get this in order. It always is because it's tough, because it ends with the Age of Enlightenment, but then there was also the Protestant Reformation. Do you know what the Protestant Reformation is, Jude?
I think so, but go
It's
for
all
it.
good. Don't worry about it. We got you. We got you. This is where Martin Luther, not Martin Luther the King,
Yes,
the person he was named after, he basically said what kind of what Omar and Bill are saying, not fully because he was still religious, but he felt that the Catholic Church had way too much power. And so the Protestant Reformation was basically saying, you don't need the priest in order to get like your direct line to God, right? Like he is the person who started the Protestant church. He is the person that Martin Luther King, the original one, was named after, right? Because he was a revolutionary in that. And guess what? His life was threatened all the time. If you read Voltaire in high school, Voltaire was a part of the Enlightenment. Voltaire was somebody who was satirizing kings and queens. And although he survived, he was beaten and almost killed multiple times. So you can think and feel what you want to think and feel. Whether you like Charlie Kirk or not, I am not a person who subscribes to Charlie Kirk. But Charlie Kirk is paying the price for being a person who is stepping up and saying things that a lot of people don't like. Charles, thinks that there was a lot of hate in that. Charles thinks there was a lot of racism in that, and I don't rock with it. And at the same time, he is now a martyr to a lot of people that did not feel heard, did not feel seen, did not feel like they could say anything in public for the last 10 years, or unless they be canceled. I'm not a white boy that feels ostracized by the country. I could say, I don't think y'all are being ostracized at all. Y'all are bugging. But I
Right.
can't tell people how to feel if I don't want people telling me how I feel. So this motherfucker just packed out a whole arena. No seats. The president showed up. The Jewish president, Netanyahu, has to come out and say, we didn't murder this dude. And I don't know if they did or not, because it does look mighty fishy in the light. I don't know if that kid is the one who did that shot. I don't know. I'm not trying to get into that. But what this episode is about, because Nicole said something that I thought was profound and it scared me. And I want to put it up there. And thank you, Nicole, for just your continued support. I know we argue a lot, but it's always love. She said, maybe we should teach households how to do family dinners again, teach parents how to talk to children, and teach kids how to listen. I hear you. But if one of the topics is freedom of speech, I'm worried for parents being able to do that because I don't think most of America knows what actual freedom of speech means. It does not mean free of consequence. It does not mean your sponsors won't drop you. It does not mean your private company will ban you. It does not mean social media will kick you off. What it means is that the fucking Gestapo can't show up at your door and say, Omar and Charles and Jubilee, y'all been teaching way too many people and we don't like it. We taking you to motherfuckers to the gallows. That's what freedom of speech is. You know why we needed that to be first? Because that shit was happening every week. Every week. It was happening all the time. That is why kings and queens was getting their heads cut off. That's why when Marie Antoinette said, let them eat cake, they said, we got something for you, lady. And her head was rolling on the ground. We were the idea of the United States, even with slavery. And again, y'all know how I feel about slavery. I feel like we owed reparations. I feel a lot of things. That's the only reason that I think this country is as prominent as it is, because you got 300 years of free labor, but stay there, but don't leave there. But the idea of the United States, and one of the things that makes it one of the greatest places is because you got those freedoms. If you want to wear a burqa, sweetie, wear a burqa. It's cool. But our government is not going to make you wear a burqa and stone you if you don't. Like in Jesus' time, yo, like when they were about to stone a woman to death for allegedly having an affair, that's why we got the First Amendment, and we are all shitting on it because nobody even understands what it is. So I got, Jube, last episode, you had that passionate moment. Omar, I get asked the same question of why did you major in poli-sci? We both majored in poli-sci for this moment on episode 205.
Straight up, man.
Because for 4 years, all I did was read about how fucked up things were. And what went into, when you talk about Adams and Locke and the debates they had, these fiery debates around, these people were building this country. And you know why they landed on this stuff. You know why so many of those people were afraid of religion. Because they knew that even if I am religious and that's my personal thing, it's such an overpowering, encompassing thing that we have to put regulations on it, only for us to forget that. And now in Oklahoma and Texas, they are mandating in Texas, I don't want to get that wrong, forgive me, they're mandating the 10 Commandments. Well, what if you get a Muslim president at some point, which we will at some point? And what if they said, we're going to do Sharia law? We're not a Christian country. It was purposely not made a Christian country because you fled a Christian country.
Yep.
So, and I am Christian. I believe in Jesus. I believe that Jesus died on the cross for me and rose 3 days later. Hear me when I say this. It is my true faith. It is something I will die over. But I love Omar, and I will protect his right to not agree with it. I would protect his right for the government not to tell him what he has to put in his classroom. But I believe in this. I'm not Muslim, but I know Bill is out of line for making that kind of sacrilegious joke about who Muhammad is. And I'm telling you from people that I know that are devout in that world, they will hurt you. And if it's not the freedom of speech protects you from the government. It don't protect you from the extremists, from the company, from the person down the street, or the person in Jubilee's classroom. If one girl said, you ugly, and this is my freedom of speech to say, you can't finish the sentence because you got punched in the mouth.
See you at 3 o'clock.
Right. But I would go above and say that there's the logic behind that, Charles, to say the reason
my apologies too, y'all. I'm sorry. I got
like,
juice on that.
the reason that a fundamentalist Muslim will invoke violence is because the laws of the religion supersede the laws of the state. This is why you have Sharia law in Saudi Arabia and in Qatar and all these other places, because what the Quran is saying is that the defilement of Muhammad is an act that violence is allowable. Violence is allowable. Like to desecrate that which is holy and sacred makes you like basically an infidel. Therefore, that law supersedes the law of the nation. And what I get is that this is why we have what we have in the United States, is that religious law, much like in England and in current day Iran, current day Saudi Arabia, those religious laws should not supersede these laws of man. And that is the experiment that we're dealing with. And that is what Trump, I think, is disintegrating, is how are we going to not step backwards into feudalistic Europe or Sharia law Iran without people like us stepping forward and fighting for what's right and protecting? Because I will say that, like, the not the Charlie Kirk, the Jimmy Kimmel situation is a good example of a whole country being like, you did what?
Yeah, and yet the people
Someone like, yeah,
yet
and
all
he-
the
Ted
people
Cruz
And
being
I
like,
and I
"Oh,
hate to
yeah.
abruptly end it. I'm I don't want to lose my beautiful membership at Soho House. So I'm at Soho House, Chicago.
Yeah, it looks beautiful,
The
baby.
theater is
it
great.
looks
It's great.
great.
Oh, they have one in New York. So next time I come, we'll to New York. We'll go kick it at the Soul House in NY. I think they got
Yay.
multiple. But let me close this out. But again, you guys have been listening to another episode of the South Star Classroom. Again, educate yourselves. Know what these things are. But for David, the bit of knowledge, Omar and Jubilee, I am Charles, and we will see you all next week, same
Lots of
bat time,
love.
same bat station, and I will get ready for this event. And this beautiful theater is gorgeous. This whole place is gorgeous. It feels like the John Wick Hotel. I don't know
Yeah,
if
it
y'all ever
does look
seen
the
the
John Wick
movies.
Hotel, like at least.
The,
Yeah, that
the
looks
whole
good as
thing
shit.
is nice. You can't take pictures and videos here, but don't tell the people. But y'all be safe, take care of each other, and again, keep fighting a good
Love
fight.
one another.
But know the rules so you can, so you're not leading people astray if you're an educator. Separate your passions and your feelings. Teach first. Let them form their own thing and then interject that stuff, because that's kind of what you're supposed to do as your educator. In
It
the
is.
meantime, y'all take care of yourselves and each other. God bless. Peace.
Love. Peace.
Bye.